Well, actually, then we'll watch what we're doing. Okay, we would like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the August regular board meeting. At this time, we would like to ask you to stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Move the flag over here.
Oh, thank you. And now the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 1 is review of the agenda and adoption of the agenda.
I have a couple of things that I'd like for the board to consider amending.
Removing?
Amending,
Oh,
sorry. One will be to appoint a student, non-voting board member that we will have start sitting on our board next month. So I'm really excited about adding that for your all's approval. And then I would also like to amend the revision of the pay index to include the assistant principal at the high school. We have one that was changed for, to reinstate that to the original pay scale.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let's do number 1 first.
That would go under 4A.
Okay, so 4A, appoint student board member. Do I have 3 members that are okay with adding that? I'm 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's your number?
Okay, under student support services for
Okay.
item 10, to
Okay,
include the assistant principal at the high school. That keeps all assistant principals at the same index, if you agree to considering that.
okay, do I have 3 board members for that one?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you got 3 for that one.
Okay, and then on item 18, there is a order change for performance services, and the information that we received is now changed, and I did not have enough time to vet that, so I would like that to be tabled.
Okay.
And then there's one item that we did not discuss.
Hang on 1 second. Are y'all good with
Sorry.
tabling that?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
now go.
We have staff that are going to end up in quarantine, and so there is that new regulation that we all received on Wednesday. We still don't have a final decision, but I'd like to have it on the agenda that we can talk about options, and then give me some direction so that we can get it formulated and have that acted on sooner rather than later, so that our staff can be protected. So that would go under student support services.
So that would be,
7A?
let's do 11. Would that be okay?
11A?
Yeah, that way it doesn't get us completely out of whack. So what did, now tell me that again, so I can get the wording right.
Consideration of quarantine leave
Okay,
and staff pay.
okay. That all? Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add?
I'd like to amend to include, advertise for legal services.
Do I have 3 that want to add that?
So, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out, when you say advertise for legal services, like proposals?
Proposals, just to be a good steward of taxpayer money and I think it's been several years, just take a look at it.
That's the first I've heard of it.
I mean, I don't care to look at proposals. I mean, doesn't bother me.
And I'm caught off guard a little bit, so I don't know.
I'm okay. Proposal is scheduled.
Just check it out.
So, okay, so Megan, you're a yes. Brenda, you're a yes. Bill?
Just proposals. I mean,
You're adding, you got three to add it.
We're looking at,
Huh?
we're looking at.
Probably internal board business?
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, anything else anybody else wants to add? Okay, if not, then I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Tawby,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Richardson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, approval of minutes for the July 19th, 2021 meeting, special meeting, the July 19th, 2021 regular meeting, July 20th, 2021 special meeting, and the July 22nd, 2021 special meeting, the July 22nd, 2021 special call meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Hendricks,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Considine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Student and staff recognition. Dr. McComas.
okay, so we are excited. This team kind of got shortchanged last year with COVID, so we are excited that we are going to be recognizing the KHSAA sports. Did not get to continue as normal, but our cross-country students were divided into pods for practice groups. Bridget Shelley had a small group of dedicated young ladies that practices through the mask wearing almost every day. In November, yes, ma'am, sorry. In November of 2020, the Kentucky Track and Cross Country Coaches Association for State Cross Country event was held in Bourbon County. And to the surprise of most of Clark County's groups of girls came out on top. The state champions for the 6th grade and under. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so come on up as we call your name, please, and I'm going to hope that I do not pronounce anything incorrectly. Savannah Thomas.
I guess there's Savannah, so we can get all of you.
Kinsley. Hadley Parks. Lakeland Hoffman. Ayla Weslakowski. Sadie Wesley. Good job, Sadie. Molly Wasson. Annabelle Fletcher. And Porter Tipton.
Okay, can I get coaches up there too? They don't get a lot.
Come on, coaches.
Coaches get their dog Bridget. We don't see Bridget.
Oh, coaches are Bridget Shelley, I'm so sorry. Miss Hoffman had this on here. Bridget Shelley, Dodd Dixon, Michael Costin, and Grayson Brookshire. Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Get in there, Dwight. Jenny, you'll have to send me one because mine was blurry. Okay. I think I got one.
Congratulations, girls.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, yep, I'm ready for the other job, the transportation, and we have a maintenance. That's it, one for each. Oh, okay. So you have a maintenance individual up next, that's what we're gonna do. Okay? We also would like to recognize from the maintenance department, Mr. Tony Ricketts. I will say, as 2 weeks on the job, I've already learned that this first statement is true. Tony is a master of all things. He will help anyone at any time. His dedication and loyalty to CCPS is second to none. We greatly appreciate his kindness, his willingness to help, his team player attitude. Thank you for your time and your work ethic. You are very much appreciated. And I think he's affectionately known as Cowboy.
Yeah.
I thought there were two men that I was supposed to meet. By the what I was being told, there was 2 men. It turned out that it was Tony. We'd also like to recognize from our transportation department, Allison Estler. So I have also got to meet Allison and hear great things about her. She is the book bus extraordinaire. She makes sure that students have the opportunity of the printed word and adventures of a great book in their hands. She travels around Winchester and Clark County roads Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays of each week during the summer months. If she notices a student, she's going to stop and ask if they would like a book. This summer was the best season yet, and she delivered a total of 2,380 books. So thank you for your time, your service. You are very much appreciated, and we could not have success with our book bus without you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, public comments.
Thank you, Tony. Bye, Miss Allison. Thank you.
Thank you all. Did you say no? Okay. All right, item number 4, overview of advanced placement results, Jamie King.
Okay, I have asked the principals to stay back because of first, so Miss Bonfield's gonna take care of this for us.
All right, so HCT scores, I'll wait till, we do all have copies of those, right? Okay, so just a few things about our ACT data from March for GRC. Is really, coming off of a pandemic, that's kind of the, I don't want to say the fear, but that is one thing that we look at is how did our students do? And you all, I'm going to be honest with you, it's really, we have maintained and they have really done well. So looking at this, just the very, we did over a 5-year trend, you'll see there. So from our 1920 to 2021, we dropped in maybe 0.2 of a point, 0.3 of a point in every area, except for, let's see, no, I'm sorry, the state composite dropped 1 total point from that 1920 school year to 2021 school year, looking at that. So same thing, looking at our trend data. If you notice, if you go scroll down for me, if you look here, so as 10th graders, or I'm looking at 1920, 2020, 2021, as 10th graders, they were 17.6 on composite, and as 11th graders, they were 18.4. So looking at that, that's why I say that we are meeting the benchmark where we need to be. You know, that's not where we want to be, but we definitely are meeting those benchmarks. So when you look at the AP data for the schools, at the very bottom of that. Okay, so out of that, there are 14 total tests that we give on the AP data. 11 of those, we are above the Kentucky pass percentage. 11 of those classes, we are. 11 were above. 3 of those classes, we are below the state passing rate. So if you look at biology, English, language and composition, and psychology, those are the 3 courses where we fell below the Kentucky pass percentage. But if you notice biology and psychology, we are only, 2-3 points off from those. Where we really notice some work is that English language composition, and it also correlates on English composition to how we scored overall in reading on ACT. So that kind of gives us something to make plans for and work with our teachers and develop those things that we can actually look at for instruction for this year. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I've got a question. For AP responsibility, it looks like, of course, with COVID, our numbers were down in that. Is there, is that
It is.
is
So,
there a correlation?
well, and not every child tested,
Okay.
right? So if they were virtual, things like that, they didn't have to test.
Okay.
If that was, so that's probably a lot of why our numbers were down.
Okay.
Mhm.
Another thing, would it be nice if we could possibly see dual credit information as well, since we saw ACT and,
Yeah, we can put that on the agenda for next month.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
because I know a lot of students are going more dual credit than they are.
So just a few more points, just to kind of let you know how impressed I was, I think, by looking at these scores, is the summary that I got. We only had 1% of our students that took less than 3 years of math courses, and of those students, 0 were college ready. So only 1% did not have that 3-year math classes. In comparison, 45% of the students who took 3 or more years of math beyond Algebra 1, 2, and 3, Algebra 1, 2, and geometry, they were college ready. So I think that's something definitely to be said for our high school and the way they are preparing our students. One thing I do want to mention is RDC. Some of the points that were mentioned was possibly allowing our students at RDC to take algebra classes, and RDC is already doing that. So they're preparing our 8th graders for freshmen so that then they can go right into the geometry instead of Algebra 1 as freshmen. So that will also help with those classes as well. Anything else?
Yeah, that's just a question. So I'm looking at the ACT trend in the top box, and the state composite actually has going down over the last 5 years, and so as ours went down gradually over the last 5 years. What is contributing to that? I mean, in 2016 was 19.7, and now we're, of course, last year with COVID, they were at 18.4. But then when I look at state composite, the trend is going down as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I actually pulled, so a benchmark score is the minimum score needed on an ACT subject area test to indicate a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher, or about 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in the corresponding credit-bearing college courses. So these scores were derived based on the actual performance of students in college. is what those like setting the benchmarks. I don't know if that, I don't really know the correlation as far as how the state itself, and what that, I was just trying to familiarize myself with how they set the benchmarks of thing,
Right.
that 18, 19. So, yeah, I mean, the 19, or looking at, that composite score, I'm not sure why. I can try to find out, and let you know.
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, it keeps
No, I
going
get-
down, and
yeah.
it's harder to get in college with the low, and
It
the break
is.
PTs keeps going down, and we'll have less opportunity for our students to go to college,
Yeah,
because,
Mhm.
at least to the larger colleges.
yeah. Mhm.
Do we have things in place maybe to help our students increase their
I
scores?
can talk on a couple of those.
I was gonna say.
So Mr. Keen, I know, has already kind of put some things in place. He has hired an ACT teacher. She's got a couple master's degrees, so she is going to be designated for ACT prep. And then CASE, you've heard us talk about CASE.
Uh-huh.
And Ms. Bonville could elaborate on it too, but CASE has a 97% reliability rate for ACT preparation and predictability. So we're hoping, using the ACT to prep ourselves and using that 120,000 item Certica bank, that will be even more prepared.
So is that a class or, it, okay,
Well, Case is not. She's talking about the
Right,
ACT prep,
that's-
I'm sorry.
yes,
But the
okay.
but the teacher will be, she'll be
Gotcha.
like an ACT prep.
Yes.
The great thing about the CASE assessments is that we can choose to give that to our 10th graders as well, and 11th graders if we, however the high school chooses,
And ninth graders.
And however we want to structure that, or he wants to structure that in his building. But it actually gives you that feedback and some direction to, for how students are performing and what we can do with instruction to make that better. So yeah, that'll really help us with those things as well.
Perfect.
Okay? Thank you.
All right, any more questions, comments? If not, we will move on to item 4A. Appointment of student board member.
Okay, so we are excited about asking for a recommendation from our high school principal. Did you?
I did, did you get
Okay.
a copy?
I did not. Did you bring yours?
I have it
Okay.
on through
So
email.
I thought if you want to read that. So we have a recommendation from Mr. Keene, our high school principal, to recommend to us a student non-voting board member that will be appointed, and we have some revisions. Mr. Thomas, do you need to review that for us on the policy so that we make sure that we're in compliance with our legal status of the board 01.1?
We do. We have, I had sent you all an email. I handed you all a document that Dr. McComas had provided to me. This was what the Owen County Board of Education, that's the written document. Also, I sent you electronically a proposal, and I had put in there some areas that you all need to decide as a board what you want. Like, for instance, how long does, we use the, under requirements for student representative, paragraph 1, that the child or the student has to attend high school for at least 2 years. Owen County had a 3.5 GPA. Is that something you want, or do you want a higher GPA, a lower GPA? That's something that you all have to decide.
Right now?
Well, if you all want to have a first reading of the policy, you do, because this is a policy that requires 2 readings. And then the Owen County allows them to serve in that capacity for 2 years. And Ms. Ritchie had indicated at some point that it would be for seniors, so that would be 1 year. We've got to decide what we want to do there. And then we'll have to design our policy to allow a different process. The process that Owen County uses, the process that Paducah uses, there's about 10 different boards in the state that allow student representatives. The Owen County board, you have to be a member of student, in order to serve on this board, you would have to be a member of student council. You have to be voted on by the student council, and there's a process as far as your qualifications. What we are proposing to do, or what you all are proposing to do now, would be to make a recommendation based upon a recommendation from a principal. So we would actually have to include, if that's what you all want to do, we will have to specifically spell in our policy, for the first appointment, this will be our process, and it will deviate from future policies. And that's a lot
Yeah.
for you all to digest, but that was, it was provided to me, Ms. Ellis provided that to me this morning, and I fixed it up and tried to get it back to Ms. Ellis and Dr. McCollum.
Well, let's take it one at a time. So let's do, I mean, was it for 1 year, a senior? Would that be?
That's what we had discussed at
with
one
year?
time.
Yeah, at one time. So if we take that from 2 years to 1 year?
Okay.
Would that be acceptable?
All right?
So you do 1 year. And as far as the GPA goes,
Now, Mr. Talbot, just to make sure I'm right, when we're talking about the first paragraph, we're just saying that the child would had to be in school for 2 years. So we don't want somebody moving in. So the first paragraph is how long they've attended Clark County schools.
Oh,
okay.
So that one could be 2 years, 3 years. You all kind of pick what you want.
well, then I'm fine
I
with
think 2 years
there,
is
too.
fine.
Okay?
The grade point average, I mean, a lot of kids at senior would take AP courses, they're tough. So I would go to 3.0
I
on
would
that
too.
instead of
I
3.5.
would say 3.9.
Okay. And then we would go down to,
The third one, about student council.
yes. Do you want them to be required to be a member of the student council?
No.
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 Okay?
Good. I just wanted
We
you to.
don't know if it's active,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, how active would student council be?
Okay?
I would have put language in there that this first appointment would be the recommendation.
And we'll put that toward the end. So on that one, we can go ahead and just take out that whole paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay?
And the next?
Will be on the, any student that meets the above requirements is an eligible candidate for the student representative. If they wish to run for this position, they must communicate this to the student council officers. So they would be selected by their student council.
I think the whole student council needs to be taken out.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
So do you like principal recommendations?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is good.
Okay, so if they wish to run for this position, they would submit.
I would think it would be some type of application process
Okay.
to the
High school
high
principal.
school principal.
All right. So they would submit an application to the principal of George Rogers Clark School. And then we'll just put who may require, the principal that may require the candidate to submit an essay.
I would recommend applications will be evaluated based on a rubric formulated by the board.
Mhm.
And I can make recommendations for the application, which can include an
Okay.
essay for future, if that's okay with you all.
Okay, would submit application to principal of George R. Clark, based upon, what did you say, Dr. McComas?
A rubric formulated by the Board of Education.
Okay. And take out everything, the rest of that,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Then leave the next paragraph in as at least the first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then take out the rest of that,
Yes, sir.
all right? And then just put the final selection will be made by the principal.
Mm-hmm.
Should it just be the principal, or should it be the principal and maybe the assistant principals in collaboration, or what do y'all think?
We
It
can
should
have
be-
them have a committee.
I think a committee would be
Okay.
nice.
Then that way you can even have a student peer that could serve on the committee. Or we
Okay.
can have a committee. Is that
All right.
okay?
I like a committee.
Yeah.
Will be made by committee.
Mhm.
whose members are determined by the Clark County Board of Education?
Yes.
And that way you can determine the makeup of that. Okay. And then the next one, the chosen representative would serve a term of 1 year.
Yes.
Okay. And then prior to the appointment, Owen County required 2 meetings that the student attend at least 2 meetings prior to the actual board involvement. Do you want to put a provision in there or just allow that individual to attend straight out of once the appointment's made?
I would think after the appointment was
Okay.
made, that the student would begin to attend, because we don't really quite have a timeline. If they were gonna take applications their junior year, they might be able to come during the summer
Okay.
to see before the school started, but we haven't established a timeline yet.
Okay, so just before that term begins, you don't just say they would be required to attend a meeting? So before they could be selected, they would have to, as part of the application process, Dr. McComas, they would have to attend a meeting?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, what do you all think?
That's fine.
There's responsibility.
Yes, if they're gonna put forth the effort to come.
Okay. And then there's a provision, the first individual who we appoint will not have a
Right.
predecessor or someone that they can say, how does this work? Do you want to assign a mentor, someone either from the board or someone from the school system or someone from central office to allow that person to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, educate that person on how the process works?
I
I
think
think that'd be a
Okay.
good idea.
All right.
I actually like that whole paragraph right there. Having them come and,
Well, we're making, but they're gonna just have to attend a meeting prior to actually being chosen.
yeah, I just liked where they had to come and meet with the predecessor before them.
And so that's why I asked if we wanted to use the word predecessor and add the word mentor. So, I mean, it may be a situation where, what happens if you have someone who's appointed, they leave school, they graduate early. And we've got somebody else, who are we going, there's not gonna be a predecessor, so if we include the words predecessor or mentor.
Gotcha.
And I think, I think that's,
I'm comfortable.
yeah, and I think, the last paragraph as it relates to that dealt with a vote of 2/3. A 2/3 would require a 4/5 vote of this body. In every other thing that you all do, it's basically a simple majority. So my suggestion would be to make that just a 3/5. It's the last paragraph on the student representative guidelines.
I'm fine with simple majority.
And Dr. McComas, what I'll do is if you all can go ahead and make a motion to have first reading of that policy as amended, I will go ahead and save it and send it to you and to Ms. Ellis
Okay? And then
right now.
Nance,
And you'll-
please.
Okay, Ms. Nance? Yes, we can do that.
Can I just make one comment? Would it be simplistic to just add a line that the students paid a minimum wage within these guidelines than to do it anywhere else?
Instead of the salary
Instead
schedule.
of the salary tables, just putting it all within this policy, that anything that is governed for this would just be right there.
Are you all okay with adding that? Warren, did you know we were gonna pay you?
No.
You did not.
We were gonna surprise you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rude.
Yeah, so, the board knows that when we checked, with the other districts, they were paying minimum wage. So we will add that and include it in the first reading.
Mhm.
Surprise. Yes. Do you want me to, you want to adopt the policy? What do you want to do first?
You need to make a motion to have a first reading on the policy.
Okay. So I will make the motion to have on the first reading of the policy that Mr. Thomas just went over with us. I want to read each thing out right now. So, that's, I'm just gonna go with that, the motion that Mr. Thomas just,
Yes, and because it is a policy, you have the ability to change it between first and second readings before it becomes effective. So if there are any changes that you all want to make after you review it, that may be done appropriately during that time period.
okay. So yes, I will make the motion to appoint the student board member policy change as Mr. Thomas just read aloud.
Okay.
That's as good as I can get for you.
And will the first representative begin September 1? Okay.
You have to have a new
Laura will
pol-
start next month.
But we have to have
We
have
went
it
to the second
again,
reading, that's right.
so they couldn't, it'd be.
So
in
Oh,
October.
yeah.
It'd be Oc-
It'll
Or-
have to be this.
it'd be after.
Or whenever, what's our meeting in September?
20th, I think.
So we can make it
We
start
can read it
September
then, if
21.
he can
And he
start.
could start that night,
Yeah,
couldn't
yep, he can start on the
Yeah, we
20th.
can put it
Mhm.
at the top of the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, you have the second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because that'll be second reading.
So you can second it.
he? Yeah, I'll second
I
the
was wondering
motion.
if anybody's just going. All right, motion by Richie, second by Tavi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Congratulations on
Yes.
getting that started. Good.
Now, do you want me to read out his letter, or do you want me to save that until?
We'll save that for
Okay.
next time.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So now we are on to number 5. Overview of ACT results, Jamie King.
I think we did
We
that.
did that one.
Yeah, she ended up doing both of those.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Item number 6, KDE grant management assurances. So, Julie, Alicia?
It's pretty much, it's just the assurances, a lot like just our district assurances that you all have to look over, that we are just, as far as following the federal funding guidelines for those parameters.
Good. Do you have anything to add on number 6? Any questions, comments?
Mhm.
My thing went down, sorry. My whole screen. Okay, so you don't need anything from us on number 6, correct? Okay, so we're on to number 7. Consider approval of application for the virtual learning option. Christy Bush.
so this is like the post-approval from the application that we use for the Cardinal virtual option that we have been working on all week. If you'll have any questions, Ms. Bush has put a lot of time in on that.
We have worked diligently all day long, calling all of our families, doing the best we can to get started.
How many, I know this is a little off of the line item, but how many is going to be starting virtual?
There were 78 applicants from grades K to 8. I'm trying to remember on my piece of paper, and there were
53.
53. Look at you, 53 high schoolers. And there were certain criteria that had to be met, and then some teacher recommendations as well if there were some circumstances.
Do you feel that everybody submitted an application on time, and, or have you gotten phone calls after the deadline?
We've had
That's my question.
We've had a few hiccups.
Gotcha.
But this is Monday, they were due at noon on Friday. Mhm.
Exactly.
And the committee convened at 1 o'clock, and of course worked until after 5. We had a couple of parents that came in afterwards, and we gave them grace and went ahead and walked the applications back. There's a lot of legwork that has to go into looking at an application before you just get it. You're pulling attendance, you're pulling grades, you know, so it's not like yes or no.
Or prep.
Right, so you get all, as they come in, we were doing a lot of legwork. So, Ms. Bush's team went ahead and somebody else went and pulled that information, and we were able to go ahead and honor their request or consider their request. And then, like she said, if we had, students that did not meet the criteria, we defaulted to some teacher input on that to determine if they can be successful through the virtual option.
Gotcha.
And a lot of times, they didn't meet the criteria for a reason, and the teacher was in line with the reason why they were struggling to be in the virtual program to begin with.
I really like this process.
Yeah, thank you.
So if they, and at that point, if they still, if it was a
It was a
denial,
team.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me.
then what? What happens there? Do they have an appeal process, or is it just over for
We
them?
expect them to be in school, and we are building schedules accordingly so that they can be back in person learning.
There are some still individual cases that we are working, that you're aware of.
Yeah,
Um,
I see what you're, yeah. It's the same thing that you just responded to, I believe.
And we've both been very diligent in our whole team looking at them and making sure there wasn't something that we messed up on and we could correct, or something was wrong in IC. We would call principals and say, let's think about this again.
Okay.
And we've done our very best that we can.
There was even looking at discrepancies about, because coding attendance during COVID was, you know, it's like participation, what's not participation. A kid can come into a classroom and not participate, but they're present, so you have a lot of those kind of discrepancies. So they saw that the attendance for one teacher was off, they even went back and looked at, you know, is there a possibility that we had an error on our side? And so they went through and looked at that too. And in most cases, it didn't make a difference. The, you know, criteria was set in a certain manner that allowed us to have our net cast in a way that we want to ensure that students are going to be successful. You know, having to go to a virtual option because the state shutdown is one thing.
Right.
Going to a virtual option when we can have kids back in person is different.
And we did have to explain that to a few parents, and so far, 3 parents have said, no, we're gonna go in school, because they didn't actually understand.
Correct.
So if they go through the year, can they have the option to go back in person?
In the very first draft, we said all year long, we went with the state. But when Dr. Molly came along, we discussed that again, and we recommended till December.
So
So-
will they reapply in December, or?
It's in the application, so they know that if they're like, okay, I'm feeling more comfortable with kids being in school, I want my child to be in school, then that's a great time to come back into because of high school schedules, middle school schedules. They would be able to get acclimated, and a schedule created gives them an opportunity to take dual credit classes if they want to, and January just seems like a nice fit. Instead of forcing a student to make this choice and you're staying out all year.
Yeah.
And our dual credit with colleges is a pretty good time, like she
Yeah.
said, to transition.
Well, I have to commend everyone that was involved in creating this on a very short period of time, so thank you all, everyone. Everyone.
Looks
I
good.
appreciate that. It was a team of elementary, middle, and high school administrators that also consulted them with their schools to bring the information back. And then once we brought Ms. Hoffman on board to help manage the Older students, we're working with our our home hospital, homebound specialist to help with the elementary students. You know, then their input was also given, so we've made adjustments through like a vetting process. So it was a lot of work, but a lot of people took ownership of it.
And our cabinet members were kind of the second, some of those participated.
Yes.
Were kind of our second read. I felt
Yeah.
like portfolios all over again.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve item 7 as written.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Talby, second by Ms. Richardson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
You might wanna just say that.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Next.
Item number 8, consider approval of the BCHC Health Clinic waiver and documents. Christy Bush.
Well, I have an example. I can't go into a lot, but we've already used them today, and you will find out when you see your email how we could not get into a certain medical facility. So we called and said, hey, can we start a little early through Telehealth? And they already have reached out to that student today. So that worked beautifully.
Good.
The tile is down on the floor. We were trying to be very, very frugal. We left the walls painted as they were, and of course, they're supplying everything inside with their own monies. It was just carpeted, and you know how we feel about carpet. So we're ready to still shoot, I think, for September 1st, right?
Looks
And
nice.
it's great. They've already hired just about everybody. They're trying to hire locally as well to make it a true, little clinic that people can feel comfortable going to. So we hope it'll be great.
So you mentioned something there that I don't think we've discussed in the past, is the telehealth. So are they going to offer telehealth services even when it's fully staffed for maybe someone that can't get there, they're stuck at school?
Yes, they can. The mental health side of that as well is a very big bonus for that. Sometimes families can't get to where they need, and that was something that was very positive.
Nice.
And our plan is still to have a ribbon cutting ceremony, you think, with you and the board and Dr. Steve?
Yeah, that may be after they open and get settled, but we'll get
Which is
that
when?
on the books. We haven't got it arranged
okay.
yet, but we wanna have a ribbon cutting for them in the community.
So does this agreement just give them ability to operate within our district? I mean, without going, reading the entire agreement?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I also think it allows them to see our confidential records for our students. So if they see Christy Bush, we will be able to share with them and how to help her.
Okay.
So that allows that. Am I correct?
Did the board attorney have any qualms with this?
No,
agreement?
we reviewed this, Dr. Livingood and I reviewed this prior to Dr. McComas coming on. We reviewed it, made some recommendations and some changes. They went ahead and
About the
agreed.
transportation and,
They went ahead and agreed to it. The rest of it was in good shape.
okay.
Yeah. And our district health coordinator also came to a meeting where we had everyone just to review how we're gonna be able to partner.
Okay.
And we had conversations about how we can also partner and include with the health department. So it will be like a triangulated effort that's really gonna maximize our resources for the community, not just for our students. So it's gonna be a good win-win for everyone.
We're also looking at attendance. May I share that with them? If a student is chronically absent and they say they cannot get in with their pediatrician, the nurses are going to call up and say, we have a student here, can mom come and bring right over? Let them be seen, and if they can come back to school, they're going to come back to school. If not, they will be treated and then be able to return when possible. So that's a win for us.
And that's a huge barrier for families, so it really, you hate to say inconvenience, but the inconvenience is getting the parent to come to school to pick up their child so that they can get into a doctor that's not gonna compromise the financial barrier for them, and then they can come back to school.
And she also told us in your office that day, if they can't be seen in Winchester for whatever reason, if there's a barrier that cannot be overcome, they have 5 or 6 other campuses that they can go to across Kentucky, if it just happened to work out in another county.
Any more questions for Ms. Christie? Well, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the health clinic waiver and documents that we presented tonight.
Motion by Ms. Considine,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Hendricks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Item number 9, consider approval of logical updates to current Chromebook student agreement terms document. Whew, Justin always has a mouthful of this stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to phrase it, so that's why it's kind
It's
of
always a mouthful.
just a logical update. There's really not much to it. There was just 3 things I changed on the student Chromebook agreement form, which made sense to me and a couple of people I had look over it. This Chromebook agreement, we still want to be in effect for anyone that takes their Chromebook home, whether it's the virtual option students, or there's some individual schools where the principal said, we really want some kids to take it home, and they weren't virtual students. And I apologize, I probably should have put what the 3 changes were. I should have marked that out, but they're pretty basic. On page 1, it used to say at the very start, for the 2020-21 school year, Clark County Schools will be implementing a 1-to-1 Chromebook plan, so I just took that out. So that way it can a little more, it can go from year to year without being changed. At the very top of page 3, under repair fees, it used to say every student 3rd through 12th taking a device home. Now it's every student taking a device home, because that was the original plan. It was just to focus on the 3rd through 12th grade, but now we're 1-to-1 K through 12. And then there was a third part that's, it was just one of the steps on the repair process that we don't do anymore. So I just threw it out. So it was just some basic stuff to make this document a little more year-to-year friendly, so I don't have to come back and update it every year, as long as we continue to offer this as an option for students.
Is that it?
Yeah, I wish I could be more verbose, I normally am. Talk about whatever you want.
I'll make a motion to accept number 9 as written.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hendricks, second by Mr. Tolly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 10, consider approval of revision to 2021-2022 salary schedule to reinstate high school principal and assistant principal index.
So this is a recommendation, again, been here 2 weeks, of trying to go through and look at how salary schedules were, I know you all are really wanting to overhaul and look at our salary schedules, I really appreciate that. I think there was some things that were switched maybe at the last minute and you all weren't given enough information. I still don't think I have prepared enough information to give you more, what you need, but I feel very confident in the high school principal salary schedule, and then per our conversation, reinstating the assistant, where 3 assistants have the 19% index and the 1 assistant now is at a lower index. They're comparable to some of the other districts of a school that size and the responsibilities that they have. So my recommendation is just to take it back to the 26% for the high school principal and 19% for the assistant. And I know you are wanting us to do more. I'm just not prepared to give you full-scale recommendations at this point, but that's obviously a charge that I take very seriously, and I will be looking into furthering that more so that we can make better decisions for next year.
Questions, comments for Dr. McComas? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to consider the approval of the revision of the salary schedule to reinstate the high school principal index as well as the assistant high school principal.
The 26 and 19 respectively.
Yes, sir. And I
Just
will,
want to add that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Richardson, second by Ms. Hendricks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 11. Consider approval of proposed parking area modification to the George Rogers Clark High School Athletic Complex. Donald Stump.
Had a rough month, and I think that's why Arlene puts me at the bottom of the agenda. When I have good months, I'm usually up a little bit higher. You think I'm kidding? In review, last month at the July board meeting, we brought before the board a proposal for your consideration, actually two proposals for your consideration. One was for blacktop work at Concrete Elementary School, which you approved and is now completed. And the other was for adding additional parking places in front of the football stadium at GRC. In consideration of that, the board chose to table that particular item with a direction to further research the project and come back to the board with additional information regarding parking places at that location. In response to that, we consulted with Ross Trant, Randy Brookshire with Ross Trant, who visited the site and made recommendations. And for the most part, he said that the only area that's available for parking structures or some construction of parking structures on that facility site was a site that we're considering. There was another site up above, on top of the road that we considered, but it was so far away from the field house and the football stadium that it was kind of moot to even consider that area because it was almost as far away as the parking lot over at GRC. So given that, we asked Mr. Brookshire to schematically draw out what a parking lot should look like from an architectural perspective. I have those here for you. Jason's put it up on the board, but for the purpose.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, Justin. So these are really small files. I printed them so you could see it much easier because I really struggle with seeing these. Files. So I'm going to kind of step over here because. So if you'll kind of look at this area that just disappeared on me. I'm sorry I called you that name. Okay, so here is are the parking spot proposals. Can you make that just a little bit more condensed because they're cutting off this area? Okay, so here's the parking structures that are proposed. And in addition to the drawing, the architects kind of gave a schematic of where they would like to see sidewalking that would complement that if the board was interested in considering sidewalking. There's a sidewalk option here. Could you make that just a little bit over this way? Yeah, we're losing a lot of it. So GRC's parking lot area over here, they would walk across the parking lot just a little bit more.
Sorry, let me change here.
Okay, there you go. All right, so here's GRC's parking area. They're considering a sidewalk, or proposing a sidewalk being constructed that is 6 foot wide from this area around this area to where a crosswalk could be made. And then another addition of a sidewalk that would come from this corner of the complex all the way down to the ramp entering the stadium. Then over on this area, entering this parking lot area from the front of the stadium, a crosswalk that would come across so that students could walk, or staff or coaches could walk over to the parking lot area instead of going through the grass. But when we look at this a little bit further, and I've noted this on your drawing, we would like to propose a sidewalk coming to the sidewalk in front of the softball stadium and then over to the parking lot area, which is about 100 feet of sidewalk, all of it 6 foot wide. So what we're asking the board to consider today are the parking lot structures in front of the stadium, based on the architect's recommendation that that's your best location for additional parking spots, if that's what you want to add to that stadium. We can get approximately 45 to 58 in that ballpark. They're not really sure based on how far they might be able to go on this end. But one of our proposals proposed mid-50s, the other 45, but they were different sizes. Allen Company proposed 22 feet long, whereas Laymore Paving proposed 20 feet long. Laymore Paving proposed perpendicular parking spaces, whereas Allen Company proposed angled parking spaces, which required 10 feet as opposed to their 9 feet. So about $6,000 difference in those two proposals that we asked the board to consider at last meeting. I think the Laymore paving quote was $72,290, if my memory is correct, and the Allen Company proposal was $78,500. So, happy to answer any questions based on the comments that were made by the architect, or has the board in consideration?
We don't have any, we don't have a proposal for the sidewalks yet, correct?
We do not.
Okay.
The construction managers told me that pricing for sidewalks currently is about $8 to $10 per square foot. 600 square feet is proposed for sidewalk at 6 foot wide, which gets you in the $28,000 to $35,000 ballpark for all the sidewalk work.
Okay. And the 72,290, that's blacktop,
That's blacktop, 24-inch curbing, gutter curbing, just like what's around the whole entire complex. That also includes 24-inch gutter curbing.
So is there, if we did the sidewalks, like you said, over to the softball field, after the blacktop was laid, would it mess any of the blacktop up?
No, because you got, across the blacktop, you've got a walkway over to the
Okay.
sidewalk.
Okay. Just,
You'd have that painted off like a
Yeah.
blacktop.
Okay.
That would enter onto your sidewalk, so your sidewalk would start to the end of the blacktop.
were you able to confirm if the tree removal would be something that the maintenance team could do?
That's what we'd expect to do. They're all pin oak trees all the way on through here. We try to relocate those. Now, on this side, if we did sidewalks, we wouldn't have to relocate any of those pin oaks. We'd go around those.
Those are beautiful trees.
Yeah.
They're expensive trees too.
So this is exactly what you showed me that day when I came out there, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So are we gonna limit these parking lots for just handicap, or what are you thinking?
Well, I'd like to certainly have the high school weigh in and athletic directors weigh in on how they would like to utilize this. But I've heard a number of conversations about letting coaches or assigning coaches areas, letting all people park there during practices, but during games, warding it off so that all your vendors could set their tents up along the parking area here and open up the entire walk or roadway for traffic. So during game days, we would block all of this off and have no parking in here.
Okay.
All the handicap parking would be over in the main parking lot by the field house. But primarily, this proposal is addressing the many students that are on that site any given day for practices and things of that nature.
And I think we discussed it at the softball field and on the right field, you know, that if someone hits a home run, those cars are gonna be subject to damage.
Yeah, hopefully it'd be a Clark County student, but
Yeah. So I know we have an extra net that was at the baseball field that was replaced. Is there any chance to reuse that?
We have
for the right
discussed that,
field?
and we would certainly pursue that possibility.
We're gonna have to do something, I mean, because it's gonna be,
You also have the
it's
same
gonna be just
risk.
like Little League.
Yeah, you also have the same risk along this parking
Yes.
area here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
With
saying
foul
that.
balls right now,
Yeah.
with softball.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it will help with the congestion after going out there, but on like game days, you know, like you said, it still need to be blocked off.
Mhm. Well, we've thrown around the possibility of buying some carts to pull the 4x4s for people in the parking lot area and transporting them over here. So it'd be great to get the vendors off of that main road so our 4x4s and carts could haul more visitors and right directly to the stadium on big game days. But the sidewalking, I think, is really important as well. It provides a safe path for pedestrians to get to the stadium without being on any road.
Could you get us estimates if the board wants estimates for the sidewalk for next month?
Absolutely, we can get quotes and bring those back to the board, or however you wanted to direct us.
I would love a sidewalk.
I'm sorry?
I would love a sidewalk.
Yeah, I think,
There definitely needs to be a sidewalk out there.
so it sounds like might be interested in getting those quotes.
Okay. And you would want me to bring those back to you next month?
Yep, would you get those, you think, is that enough timeline to get those quotes for next month?
Mm-hmm.
And we can go ahead and send them in advance so that they can review them before the board meeting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would advertise those in the Winchester Sun. See what kind of bids come in.
What's the timeline on starting the parking lot or parking spot?
Well, we have one project out behind Campbell that we're finishing up now, and if it hadn't rained today, we probably had that project done in a couple of days, so I'd say by next week you'll start. Or if you wanted to go with a low bid, he would start. I haven't spoken with the Allen Company, I could call them if you're considering the Allen Company, but, or putting it up for rebid, I don't know, it'd be the board's preference. But right now, we have 2 bids, I've advertised those, you considered those in June. Those are still on the table, and both vendors are committed to those quotes, those bids. They finished the one in Concord pretty quickly.
So
Maybe
what,
longer, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking, what do you think in your mind would be a timeline? Because, I mean, we are in football season. And construction with games occurring seems.
I think reasonably that parking lot, or that whole structure could be completed in less than 2 weeks, possibly a week.
May take longer to remove those trees than it would.
Oh, we'll get those out in a day.
Oh, will you? Do you have one of those, does maintenance have one of those tree removal diggers?
No, we know someone who does.
Oh, okay.
Tree removal diggers.
Well, I don't know the name of it, but you know what I was talking about.
I do.
Okay.
Would there be any preference to where to move those?
Somewhere pretty.
If you don't kill them.
I mean, you got that whole side on the others, you've got, the whole side in that parking lot that don't have any trees on it, that's going toward the weight room and the baseball fields.
Well, we would be open to recommendations.
I mean, I was just thinking somewhere close, you know, so. I'll leave that up to maintenance.
Well, we'll get-
I hate to lose those trees though.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve item 11 as written.
Motion by Mr. Dolly. I'll second that.
Could you reference which vendor or which bid you'd like to go with?
I'm referencing the $72,290.
Okay.
And where's the money coming from?
Or we recommended it come from your general fund, so we wouldn't have to put it through the BG that currently exists on that. You get all the markups from the architects, your construction managers, your contractors. We have, Alicia, I want to say 200,000 left in the contingency on that BG.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly 200,000. You could use that, but if you did that, we'd have to go through the change order process at KDE. And you would get markups from your architects, your construction manager, and the vendors.
But if you use your general fund, we do have the ability to do capital funds requests and reimburse from capital funds. So we have access.
And it would just be that much more money that would roll back over into the general fund when the project was closed.
This isn't subject, is this subject to, this isn't subject to KDE approval, is it?
No,
Okay.
no, this is one, if you pay out of your general fund,
Yeah, we don't have to do that.
Okay.
Do you feel like we have the money to put into this kind of a project?
This was something that was discussed prior to becoming, I'm concerned about the general fund being spent in general, when we have other avenues to look at. This is something that I believe Ms. Ellis and Donald have vetted and gone through, and the cost savings from the general fund versus what he's referring to with the BG, I would support because of the work that they put in. Moving forward, we will be exploring like all of those options where we would be able to give you projections of what this would cost versus what this would cost. I just want to caution how we spend out of general fund and our revenues not matching that and not relying on our contingencies. So that's just my caution for us moving forward.
capital outlay is an option as well, is what you were suggesting.
That's
Which
my
would not be
recommendation is capital outlay. It would essentially be spent from general fund, but then you're reimbursing from general fund from capital outlay.
I think that's a good move.
Okay, so we still, motion stands?
Mhm.
You're not changing nothing?
No.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, so all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 11A, consideration of quarantine leave and staff pay.
Okay, I'm gonna actually put, these two ladies on the spot, Alicia Devon coming up too, and Miss Tammy, Dr. Parrish, and Miss Ellis. And I have, been going back and forth cabinet met this morning. Dr. Livingood has been part of this conversation too. We've been reaching out to other districts and really no one that, has kind of honed in on exactly what they should do. But the issue that we have, is around the quarantine leave and the regulation 702 KRA, KAR 191E that had, around if a staff member is quarantined, vaccinated or not vaccinated, and how that's gonna be handled. And so this hasn't even been passed yet, but if we wait until our next board meeting, then we are gonna be in a situation where we're either gonna retro pay people back. So we would like some guidance on how you all are feeling, things that we can do to help protect staff pay. And we also met with the health department this morning on what the quarantine procedures are gonna look like. So I'm gonna let them, give you some information on this, and then, we can talk about the 3 scenarios that we discussed this morning. Is that okay?
Yeah, we were hoping that the board could make a recommendation to kind of stand alone and make our own decision, where Ms. Ellis has looked at some numbers, would it look like to give them 5 additional emergency days or 7 additional emergency days, because the health department's gonna quarantine them for 10 days, regardless of their vaxxed or not vaxxed, if they test positive or not. So I think she has those numbers for you.
Yeah, so we just collectively decided basically about 20% of our staff is probably who's gonna be using this based on historical, use of the days. And so the staff member itself, the contract pay is not gonna change on our budget because they're contracted for X amount of days. They're just getting additional emergency days or time off within that same contract. But your costs that are gonna increase is the subs for your teachers that are gonna be off. We're gonna have sub costs higher because they're off for this. So if you take the 20% of our staff, which is roughly 200 people, and do the 5-day, 7-day, and looking at the max cost that could possibly, and this is, max cost, it's most likely not gonna be that highest cost. I just went with the highest. So the 5 days, you're looking at about $150,000, and 7 days, you're looking at about $210,000, and that's with the benefits added onto it. And that's with the extra benefits saying we're gonna pay it out of federal funds. So there's a little bit higher benefit markup when you use the federal dollars, because we're proposing that we would use the ESSER funds to help pay for those extra costs.
And we looked at the data from last year that we collected on leave requests for quarantines, and from January to May, we only had 43 employees use it. So we're not anticipating that 200, but
Right.
just to be cautious, she went ahead and went with that 20% factor, so. But we'd also like for it to include something like, the employee has to request in writing to use the emergency days, and then have documentation from the health department or their PCP.
And that these are separate from the 3, they still have, if we go with the 7, you still have a protected 10 days. And we're not getting into the, have you been vaccinated, have you not been vaccinated? Are you staying home with your child, or are you the one that's sick? So you're kind of just, you're trying to do this as fairly as possible, considering what staff, are gonna have to go through with the, ins and outs of quarantine and statuses. So the 7 days would be like the additional time. Now you have 3 emergency days that all staff get anyway. If they end up, God forbid, there's a death in their family, and they need to take an emergency day, they still have those 3 emergency days for that. But they only have 7 then, that's COVID time. So it's not like you can take the 7 and translate them into the same use as the other emergency time.
So these are just COVID?
Yeah, and they don't roll over. We're gonna propose that they don't roll over. This is, year by year. Hopefully, this is our last year making some decisions like this. That we wanna be able to have that opportunity to protect that time for staff. And again, with the health department, there's gonna be a letter issued, with your doctor's office. So it's not somebody calling in and saying, I've been told to stay home. That's your sick time. If you can't produce evidence for that, that's gonna default to sick time. And then you're gonna get into, my kid was sick, I've got it, now I'm at, day 12. Well, you had 10 days of emergency time, and now you're into your own sick time. And I can't tell you that that's the best way to do it. But that's the best thing that we can think of right now, based on the guidance that we're given. And the other scenario is based on what the law is that they're gonna try to approve, that hasn't been approved yet, is basically saying, if you've been vaccinated, do you wanna recant that to make sure that I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it correctly? 'Cause
So the reason we wanted to ask that you all make a local board decision is because it's, in their guidance, it says that if you have been vaccinated and you still test positive, that's a sick day. So you don't qualify for any of the emergency pay. Also, at the top of it, if you look back at the top, it says that the employee only qualifies if they meet these standards, and one is they have to be vaccinated, or they have to bring in a letter from their doctor saying they can't be vaccinated. And the other part is, we have to vet them, did they say it's against their religion? So we just didn't want to have to police all of those things, and, it was just so much easier to say, let's just blanket it.
Yeah, and this is political enough, we wanna make sure that we are just operating on what can we do to support staff with this?
So the document you all are referring to,
We just received this.
okay, so we don't have
Yeah,
a copy
no,
of that?
sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Thought I missed that.
Yeah, no, we just received this.
Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't even made it to the legislative research committee yet. So it's-
Is that the 702 KO?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah, that was,
But what's happening is we're already putting staff in quarantine.
Sure.
Per the health department. We have some transportation staffs, mom was exposed to, and not saying that people are sick or not sick, but they're in quarantine. So they're asking a lot of questions. And I also just want to make sure that we are on the cusp of starting school, regardless of what our answer is. I would just like to be able to give staff, either we go in with sick time, you're gonna use your sick time in your 3 emergency days, and that's what we have. Or if we have an opportunity, through our ESSER funds, that we would like to be able to use that.
So, I'm sorry if I missed this, so would they use their sick days before they would use their COVID, or they would use the COVID sick days before the sick days?
If they have the documentation,
They
we would
use the
allow
COVID.
it to be for emergency time only.
Okay.
And your proposed is 5 or 7, and we're going to make that decision, correct?
Yeah, or we are going to stick with how the guidance will be written, which is,
The 702.
which is just gonna be sick time.
Yeah.
And with our ESSER funds, so this is protecting our general funds. And with our ESSER funds, we have also found that some of our staffing allocations that we had, we can go back and relook at our staffing allocations, just like with the federal funds, if you're waiving insurance versus not waiving insurance, we're able to kind of protect some of that funds, which will be able to absorb this cost. So it's not new money that we're asking anybody to fund. It was creatively using our ESSER dollars to see if they ran the numbers today. So this was not something we've been able to work on for a long time. But with our ESSER plan being revised, which Ms. Bonfield and Ms. Ellis and I had been doing all week, we knew that we had this other, I don't want to say found money, but by using it more efficiently, we had other monies that we can dedicate towards this.
So worst case scenario, a staff member is quarantined first semester and uses their emergency leave. Unfortunately, February rolls around and they're quarantined again.
Sick time.
It would be sick time.
It'd
Okay,
be
I just
sick
wanted to
time,
clarify
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and last year was kind of like the wild, wild west,
It was
right?
like, oh.
It was like free for all, what are we doing? Let's kind of let everyone have something. This provides us with some structure, Also, just knowing how difficult it's gonna be. But I feel like that's a good compromise. Ms. Bonfield, do you mind going to turn the AC down in my office, please?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think,
I would
7
be more 7 days, and then that, their 3 emergency would give them the 10.
Now, if they choose, like I said, if there's an emergency and they need those 3 days, just like they would in any other year, they still can use that. However, that doesn't mean that they get 10 days. We are trying to allow them to have 10 days by coupling with the 3 that they currently have.
Right. But if they had had a death first and they had used their 3 days and then they're exposed and they're in quarantine, they would only have the 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. And then the rest would be sick.
Yes.
Okay.
And if they're sick, Dr. McComas, it's sick leave. If
It's
they-
sick leave.
So this is only for quarantine, so if they are exposed and they have it,
No. This is if it's COVID related,
COVID related.
that we are using the emergency days.
okay.
Are you looking at the
I had read the regulation. right?
definition of emergency leave?
I actually looked at the regulation earlier today. That was one of the topics that came across my
Yeah, and
thing.
that's what we had said earlier, that the regulation is saying if they're sick, sent home with COVID, that they're using sick time.
Right, yeah, if
Yes.
they- yeah, if.
That's
no,
what
if-
this is saying. What I'm proposing is that we have the 7 days added to their emergency time,
Regardless.
regardless.
Okay.
Now, if you see that there's gonna be a reason that we can't do that, please tell me.
No, that's fine. I was just, the policy itself that was passed by
Yes.
KD on August the 11th said you could, if you actively had COVID, it was a sick. This was just intended for quarantine.
Quarantine.
If your kid gets sick and they said you've been in contact with your kid, you gotta stay home for 10 days. And that's what it would be. But you're wanting to expand it to say for any COVID related.
Yeah, and if I may, I'm not saying anyone would intentionally be like, well, I'm not gonna go get tested because if I'm sick, I don't wanna use my sick time. But if you are a younger teacher that's, your sick time because you're staying home at different things anyway, and you're not sick, but you've been exposed, I worry that we're not going to then go get tested, because I'm afraid if I'm positive, I'm gonna have to use my sick time, and I may not have much of that to begin with. So that's where that concern was coming from.
And it is coming from ESSER funding, which is COVID related.
Yes.
Emergency related.
Yes.
funds.
So the cost of the subs would come from ESSER, but also the cost of these days.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The days would also.
Because that's what we did with the prior fiscal year. All days that were coded specifically to COVID have been paid out of ESSER. So the same thing would occur with these days. So you're gonna get those days off of your general fund that would be normally contract days because they've been COVID days are going to ESSER. So that kind of twofold does save your general fund a little bit of money in that aspect.
And worst case scenario is if you all agree to pass it, like we're recommending with the 7 that gets used for COVID isolation, sickness, or emergency. And if somebody comes back and says you can't do that because of this, worst case scenario is we're stuck
With that
with this.
regulation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does this cover all staff, certified and classified? The numbers that you,
Well, I ballparked the figure on the certified because they're the higher cost. So when you calculate it in the classified, it's really going to be less. I just did the highest number that I could possibly give you to overestimate.
so your recommendation is the 7?
My recommendation is for the 5 or the 7 to bring members both ways. I would not have so hastily brought this to you if we had not been doing all of this work with the ESSER fund this week, seeing that we had this flexibility within our money that we're submitting to KDE. So when this new issue presented itself and our cabinet team was meeting yesterday and this morning, it was like, how can we creatively try to solve a problem that's protecting our staff and the money's, if we had to go back and do all this, we wouldn't have been able to bring this to you tonight. We would be waiting 2 weeks out, doing the same thing that we did last week, and well, it was last week that we did, it feels like it's already Friday, and this is Monday. But what we were doing last week, we wouldn't, if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have been prepared to make a recommendation today.
So how would we word the motion? Would we, would the
Approval
motion
of-
be,
At 7 additional emergency days.
Yeah, I think,
For the 2021 school year.
that you all would recommend that an additional 7 days be allocated to those staff who are quarantined as a result of COVID-19, in addition to any normal sick day allocations or emergency day allocations. Related to COVID. And then probably would say, because the emergency says leave granted under this section shall not accumulate or carry over beyond the 2021-22 school year. So you would just make that motion and say which additional days shall not extend past the 2021-2022 school year. And of course, they have in their regulation, we won't have to put it in there because it's already KD policy. They cannot transfer it to another
District.
another teacher.
Oh, okay.
They can't convert it if they don't
Yeah.
use it. They can't convert it to a paid
Right.
leave. So
Gotcha.
there's a bunch of restrictions that they've placed on it already.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to, I'll make a stab at it. For the 2021-22 school year, I'll make the motion to approve 7 additional emergency days related, 7 additional days of, 7 emergency days. 7 days of emergency
Emergency leave,
for emergency leave related to COVID
quarantine.
Or illness.
Or illness
Right.
related to COVID.
Related to COVID.
With the proper documentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Started off well, then kind of went sideways there, didn't it?
Motion by Mr. Talbot,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Richardson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 12, setting dates for future work sessions.
Okay, so you all had asked about work sessions. I was looking with Ms. Nance, with our remainder of our schedule. So September, we technically have 2 meetings anyway. We have a regular meeting on September 20th. We have the working budget on the 27th. If you want to schedule a work session, we could do it before the 27th if you feel like we need it. And then I'm just reviewing the schedule here. October 18th is a regular board meeting. And then we have another meeting on the 25th. So if you want a work session then, if you feel like these are enough and we don't need to do work sessions. November, we just have 1 meeting. So if you want a work session in November, we could look at dates for that. And then I have 2 other recommendations beyond work sessions for special called meetings. One would be December 20th, is the Monday, our first day off for Christmas break, winter break. So I didn't know if you want to leave that on for December 20th, or if we want to cancel it and then move it up a week to December 30th, which would then need to be called a special called board meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So do you want work sessions added to the September 27th or the October 25th, and/or create a work session in November? Or do we want to table work sessions and then think about what that's going to look like when we set our new calendar for January?
Do you anticipate a lot coming up on the next few agendas. Do you have any insight?
Well, in September, we're gonna need to have a special called board meeting for our, setting our tax rate. So, if I may, can I go ahead and make a recommendation for that?
You sure can.
So, I would recommend, I've also asked Ms. Ellis, I'm like, where'd she go? I've also asked Ms. Ellis to go ahead and start pulling our trend data for what we've set as, tax record, or for our tax rate. Have we stayed the same? Did we do compensating, or did we do the 4% or 4% with exoneration? So she's got all of that data ready, so that if you wanted to do a special called board meeting on September 7th, we could have, we would have enough time to have it advertised for 2 weeks, because she's already done a lot of front work on that. We could have the hearing on the 7th at 6:30, and then have the meeting at 7, if you are agreeable to that.
September 7th?
September 7th.
Mhm.
Do we need to do these individually, these
It would be,
motions?
yes, that would be two motions, one to set the tax rate hearing at 6:30, and then one for the special call meeting to set the rate.
Okay.
You said the 7th?
That's Tuesday.
Yes, this, September 7th. Ms. Ellis, we are good with that date, right? Okay. Ms. Nance, has also pulled, I asked her to pull the information from last year's, and that's how we did a very similar process last year. So just to make sure that we were in, the same kind of line, we did that.
So 6:30 is to set the tax rate and 7 o'clock is the work session.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
No,
well,
no.
6:30 would be the hearing.
You have to have a
Okay.
public
You have to have a
hearing.
public hearing.
Yeah.
After you set the rate.
Okay.
And then at 7, we would have the meeting
Okay.
to vote on it.
Because your advertisement's going to be a proposed rate,
Okay.
and then you have the public hearing, so you come in and
comments.
complain, and then at 7, you get to
Comments.
comment, comments.
Comments.
Okay, so that's September 2nd. I got that one.
And that's a Tuesday, by the way. September 7th is a Tuesday.
Monday's Labor Day.
Monday's Labor Day. So,
We need to make a motion on that?
Yes, you do two motions.
Yeah, because you got to do the, it's 2 meetings.
Make a motion for September 7th at 6:30, have a public hearing on tax rate.
Motion by Mr. Tawby,
Second.
second by Ms. Hendricks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And we'll go for the second one.
Let's give them somebody else an option.
You've written it all down.
All right, make a motion for September 7th, 7 o'clock meeting, special call meeting
To set the tax
to
rate.
set the tax rate.
All right. Motion by Mr. Tawby,
I second.
second by Ms. Constantine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
and then given that we have the 27th of September and October 25th as meetings, I don't feel like, I feel like, you know, we're still learning each other, but I think how you all are getting your information and able, you know, a little earlier, and you're asking questions, I'm able to get that back to you timely. I feel like we are fine to not set the second meeting unless you want to attach the work session to one of those current working budget or SAR report meetings. If you don't feel like we need it, at this point, I can't say that we will or we won't.
We can always come back and add.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is we
Okay.
can add these work sessions if we need them.
Okay, and then the December 20th, if you all want to make a decision about canceling that, I'm fine either way.
Moving it
And
to the 13th?
moving it to the 13th.
Okay.
I worry about just school being out and if people have family to travel to. I don't, I'm on right down the road from me, but if folks have family to travel to, then they might want to leave Friday and not be here.
I just think
Yeah.
spend time with your family.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the 13th?
Will be our regular meeting.
Yeah, so we will, it will actually have to be called, to my knowledge.
Special.
It'll be a special call
Okay,
meeting.
special called board meeting, and we will cancel the 20th.
Does that need to be?
We need a motion for that.
Motion for-
Yes.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. You can set it now, or you can set it in the future. It just, whenever you do set it, it has to be a special call meeting.
Would it be better to do it tonight since we're thinking about it?
Whatever you all want to do, I mean, that's fine, I'm just
Go
saying.
ahead, that way it's already on the
That's,
schedule.
I think so too.
Make a motion to call a special meeting for December 13th at 6:30.
Motion by Mr. Tobey. I'll second that. All right, let me write it down, sorry. All right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Do we need to make a motion to cancel the regular
Cancel.
meeting for the 20th?
No, you don't have to have a motion to
Okay.
cancel it, you all can just cancel it.
So, yeah, you can go ahead and put that out there that's canceled. Okay. And then just leave the others as is. All right, so then on to 12A. Legal proposals. Sherry.
I just thought it would be a good time, since we've got some new people here, that we take a look and put the advertisement out for legal services.
How does that work?
I think in the past we've put it in paper. Is that correct? And how long do we give for that?
Is it a proposal process?
It's a proposal for new services.
We have an RFP, we don't have an RFP, we just ask them to send in one. I have an ad that we just typically use, that we just change the date to when it's due.
I think it's gonna be very hard to beat what we have in proposals because, I mean, he doesn't bill us for hardly anything but his set rate.
That doesn't mean Brian's getting the axe, for lack of a better other term. He'd be more than welcome to
Apply.
Okay.
So
Is there-
Brian would reapply?
Is there a
Yes.
reason, is there a reason why you're asking for
I
it?
just think it's a good opportunity to take a look at it. Sure.
How long have you done it?
This will be 2.5 years, since 19.
And we had Mr. Rosenthal for how many years?
Well, I mean, I'm
We don't
gonna-
pay as much as Bourbon County.
I get what she's
We
saying.
don't pay as
I
much
need
as
a
Bourbon
reason.
County.
We pay a flat fee every month.
Yeah.
I'd like to make the motion that we advertise for legal services.
Motion by Ms. Richardson. Is there a second?
And this is not terminating anything. You
No,
can still apply.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, actually, it would be, if there's a new proposal, then you would have to provide notice, and then, because you can't, because currently you'd have counsel, so you would have to terminate, a notice to terminate, and then then I would be allowed to reapply. That's what it would be.
So explain that again.
Yeah.
So you can't have an RFP unless you have, I mean, you have
A
to have. an open-
termination.
So there would have to be a termination. So there would have to be notice of termination of the services of our contract, and then an RFP for a new contract.
Where's your contract now, month to month?
It's not the,
But then when we have a lapse in service,
you did last time.
but don't we have to give you like a 30-day thing? I thought.
Yeah, so if you decide that you want to put an RFP out, you'll have to say, this is when the RFPs are going to be due, this is when we're going to review the RFPs, this is when we're going to decide on the RFPs, this is your last day.
What if you put a proposal out and no one applies?
Then you all get to decide whether or not you want to hire me back, or whether you want to redo.
Well, then at that point, you'd have to put a proposal back in.
Pardon?
You'd have to put, if we weren't under contract with you, you'd have to put a proposal back in, and if nobody applied, then what do we do? Just come beg you back? I mean,
Well, if I put in an RFP, then you could hire me back. If I don't put an RFP, then you would be without counsel. And you'd have to just redo it until you got somebody.
Until you receive proposals, correct?
No, I guess I'm of the opinion I need cause to do that right now, so.
I kind of get what she's saying, just to make sure that we're competitive, and not just from our standpoint, I mean, I agree with Ashley, he didn't really charge us a ton.
No.
So to make, I mean, just to make sure we're competitive all the way around, I think that's an issue on a broad scale here.
But you're taking the risk of, you're gonna lose that chance of, he can also be the only one to apply and raise his funds, his
Well,
prices.
I mean, if that's the case, he's at every meeting, if we can come to an agreement on, I mean, if we're all happy, we can come to an agreement on it, then, if you're getting good service, you wanna pay for it. I don't want anybody to come to anything and be underpaid. I think we have to remain competitive, and, I mean, it's fine with me in that aspect.
And I could just tell you, Bourbon County, they just approved theirs $3,000 a month. That's what they pay. They pay $36,000. We pay 20.
But sometimes he'll be in my district 5 times this week, spending a half a day. I may not see him next week, so I think it all kind of.
And since,
Balances out.
and since
I'm sorry.
Does it balance
he's
out?
came, I mean, I'm sure his hourly rate is more now than when he came on.
No, I've kept my hourly rate at 125 for you all. Anything over.
Well, I mean, at your practice in general.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 3 times what, I'm 3 times that.
I wasn't prepared for this or anything else. I'm a no. I mean, this kind of just caught me completely off guard, as I think it did Brian. I think that's very tacky on our part, because we're gonna be giving him a notice basically tonight.
Well,
At
I
this
mean, we have
point.
to submit it in writing, don't we?
But you'll have to make that decision. If you want the RFP, then you would instruct her to send me a notice, to provide me a notice of termination of services.
Are you gonna reapply?
I don't know. If I'm not wanted, then probably not. I'm not doing it for the money, I promise you that.
I would like to make sure that we're competitive across the board, whether that means paying him more or, whatever. I just think it's.
Well, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for the service.
I understand that, but I also get what Sherry's saying, and at the same time, if we're not paying you enough, I get that you're not doing it for the money, but at the same time, I want people to be paid their worth too. Just, you have bills, you have an office to keep up, phones don't answer themselves for free. So, I mean, I get that from both ways. And if I vote yes for it, publicly, I don't want to offend you. Because that truly is how I feel.
Well, there's a motion on the floor right now, so.
Well, I'll second it.
I still wanna have a
Welcome
discussion
you
with
to
it.
apply.
That's fine, but we gotta,
Yeah.
so motion, and it's seconded by Ms. Hendricks, so. Now you can have your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going out and making sure that our bank is competitive. I mean, I think our attorney is at $125 an hour. I doubt you're gonna get that anywhere else. I mean, so we're going, what you're asking to do is give him notice to go out so we can pay someone more for counsel, that as far as I know Brian's been called, Mr. Thomas has been called after hours probably by every one of us, and he's always answered, and probably more so than he wanted on weekends and
And I've been
after
one
hours.
of those people, and I'm not.
So I don't get why this is coming. I need just cause why we would do this. No one is saying, it's just, well, let's see what's better out there. I need just cause. And if someone wants to say why, I'll listen, but I'm a no otherwise.
Well, I'll just say that I would entertain proposals because I made a motion to accept Ross Torrent as an architect without getting additional bids. And I did it that night because I felt like it's what we've always had. We've gone with them, why not? And then the more I thought about it, I thought, okay, we just allowed ourselves, because I'm the one that said, why would we go with somebody different? And then tonight, we just accepted additional parking places for $72,000.
But you can't compare Ross Tarrant to this. the previous boards have approved that architecture.
Sure.
You gotta put the onus on them as well as the architect. That road was never designed for parking places. It was a service road. So for you to kind of use that.
No, but I mean, in my
In comparison, it doesn't matter. And I know some people will say, well, we had issues with Ross Tyrant, we want to hold them accountable for certain things, and we shouldn't have done it so quickly.
Right.
Well, that should have been brought to the board before the meeting,
Exactly.
okay? And it wasn't. This is a different discussion.
I mean, you just asked my justification.
Yeah, I know, it's just, I don't find that comparable, but
I hope Brian apply, I mean,
I don't know why you would want to.
I'm sorry. I get.
I just think there's personal agendas being played here instead of what's best for the district. And it's a shame for Dr. Thomas's first meeting.
Bill, you don't
Seemed
need
like
to bring
this.
that up.
I didn't, I
You
just said, I think,
just
just
don't
think
need to
there
go
is.
there. That's,
I didn't point
this
no
is not the
fingers.
place for that. We have
Exactly,
a
it's
vote in
not.
motion, so let's continue
No,
with
we
our
was in
business.
discussion. We're in discussion, and I have a right to my opinion.
So we'll take a vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Motion carries 3-2. Consider agenda items. Items number 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28.
You want to hear my board report first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, this makes day one of week 3, and, I'm just really excited to be here. It's been a whirlwind. We, in the first week of school, or in the first week of me being here, our team put together the return to school plan. As you know, we originally, were stating that we were making masks, optional, or recommending masks, but it was a student and parent choice. We had really good systems in place and protocols in place to make sure that that was gonna be, handled, well. So we did that, and then we have changed to follow the executive order that's in place. And we're revamping some other things, in our schools, just to make sure that, we have multiple layers to mitigate, COVID, in addition to the mask, social distancing for 3 feet whenever possible with students, making sure that our classrooms are cleaned properly, hand sanitizing, all those things, encouraging students to cough and sneeze in their elbow and all that, that type of stuff. With the virtual learning plan, we were excited that Dr. Davies also kind of stepped up, and she made it available to our preschool students as well, so she's handling that separately. We have, as Ms. Bush has already stated, K through 4 and 6 through 12. They're handled with a similar program that ran by 2 different departments that we're working with. We also had the application that you've already done, as stated before, 53 GRC students, 78 across the others across the district. The committee has worked very hard with that. We vetted those all week, and the committee met on Friday. We have been rehauling our, well, I shouldn't say rehauling, but looking at our gifted and talented instruction, making sure that we have a good program in place for each elementary school and our intermediate school. It's going to have 1 day a week. Reviewing and identifying gifted and talented students is underway, really trying to make sure that we increase the number of students that can be eligible for that program. And then we are exploring other options to make sure that opportunities are available for our students at RDC. GT is going to be provided through making sure that students are matched with their appropriate pathways at GRC. We talked about just our interactions as a board and how our leadership teams are going to work closely with our direction as a board team and what we want our district to be going through as a leadership team. And that carries down into schools, so we've had great conversation around that. There was some conversation that we as a board team had around internal finance audits. So our audit is in place for September. I'm going to be working with the auditors and Ms. Ellis to kind of look at some specific areas that we want a little bit more attention put on. The considerations of this audit will be looking back at those internal controls that we had from last year's audit, what we're comparing against for this year's audit, which is going to help prepare us for some of the organizational restructure that we may need to do that's aligned to the pay scale. So kind of going back to that bigger conversation that we had. Our overall commitment, myself and what I feel like our board team is trust, commitment to our leaders. My number one goal, as I've told them, is to build trust with them, with you, among them, with each other, with our cabinet leaders, with our board, and just making sure that we're all working for what's best for students, that we truly are student-centered. We want to focus on what does greatness look like. And so our principals and our teachers are hearing about what does that look like in the classroom, what does that look like in our PLCs, what does that look like on the football field, what does that look like on our buses, what is that going to look like in our cafeteria. So it's not, greatness is not something that is isolated to a classroom model. It's how we all interact with one another, and greatness really does start with relationships, and so we want to have intentional relationships. Our health clinic, as we've already said before, we have worked closely already in the last 2 weeks with our health clinic through Bluegrass. The director came, our district health coordinator came. We went through discussing those services. That behavior specialist that Ms. Bush pointed out is a nice extra that we did not realize we originally had until last week, and that telehealth component that we're going to be able to use. We also had the new tile put down, the old modular out back was removed, so Mr. Stumpf already had that taken care of. Ms. Hoffman had gone in and got rid of things that needed to go so that the crew could come in and get to that without having to do a lot of extra stuff. So she and her kids, I believe, actually worked on some of those things. That's going to provide extra space in the back of the facility for parking, so we're excited about that. I've attended Baker, Concrite, and Justice open houses this week. Tonight, obviously, I'm not at RDC or Shear, but they were very well attended. Students and parents are excited. They're ready to get kids back in school, so we're excited about that. Honestly, our kids are like, they just want to be back. You know, us as adults have different opinions on things, but our kids are ready to come back. It looked like you could rival any Black Friday shopping crowd at our back-to-school event. So it was extremely overwhelming to be a part of that. We had 2 programs that I learned about that I'm sure you are all very aware of, but I was super excited, so I'd like to share that. Our after-school program, so I got to talk with our ladies that run our after-school programs. It's an extremely reasonable fee, $85. The students come, it's at each elementary school, and I believe at our intermediate. Is it also at our intermediate? And they were very thrilled to tell me how they have coordinated systems in place to help with homework help. They get a snack, and they have either a 4:30 or a 6 o'clock pickup time for a steal, $85. And it could have a little bit higher rate depending on how late they need to stay. But then there's also a program, I won't state the name because I don't want to promote one over the other, but we have a program where they teach karate. They have a bus, they come and pick their kids up. And they take them 5 days a week back to their facility, teach them karate, give them a snack, and parents can pick their kids up there. And it's comparable in cost, $75 to $85. So I was super impressed. That's probably one of the highlights of my week, is finding out that we have all these great programs. As far as professional development goes, there was a lot of different programs offered across the district. The ones that I personally attended was our Exceptional Child Educator and Related Service Provider workshops. They were phenomenal. They were talking about compliance training, goal setting, best practices in our resource classroom, which I will say needs to be shared with our general ed teachers because the practices they're using there are great for all struggling learners and can really benefit general ed instruction. There's a lot of Infinite Campus enhancements on data entry. And so the training there was showing special education, our exceptional child educators, how they can go in and look at frequency of goal setting and how that's going to chart out so that you have visual representation for students. So that was great. And then they also had a math session, which was my favorite. RDC had a leadership challenge, and they were asking it more internally. But what I found impressive, that was put on by KASA, but a lot of their teachers want to know, are we going to keep operating as a system of schools, or are we going to operate as a school system? So that's really harnessing the work that we're gonna be doing, is that we want our elementary schools to be more coordinated. We want more vertical alignment to happen between our schools so that our students are really getting the best impact and that we have similar systems in place. They're also looking for in leadership, support, honesty, trust, dependability, inspiring, and cooperative. So I'm committed to delivering on those principles that they are worried about. Our attendance clerks and secretaries met. Ms. Bush had her crew in here, and Cassie Puckett, she does a phenomenal job working with our attendance clerks and our secretaries. They talked more than just how to properly code attendance. And it was how to build good systems and support their teachers, how to support their principals, how to make sure that kids were coming to school and what those systems in place look like. So they went over all of that along with Infinite Campus updates. We also had our certified evaluation training that CASA puts on. That's a $3,000 price tag, well worth it. But I've also learned that we can get certified ourselves. So our cabinet team is gonna identify probably myself and another cabinet member to go get that training so that we can start doing that on our own. Because in addition to that $3,000, we had different leaders that couldn't attend those sessions that then had to pay to go elsewhere. So that's probably a higher rate overall for the district. So we found out that when looking at our certified evaluation, you could be off one day and you can be out of compliance. So when you are saying, are you counting 30 days? Well, am I counting day 1 or are you counting day 2 as 1? You could end up having your dates off. So we did a really neat activity where they broke up into 4 groups. Everybody had to review the certified evaluation plan and write down the date that you felt like your evaluations. Now, we don't ever want to wait up until the last minute to do evaluations anyway. If it's a growing process, we're doing that all along. So Ms. Bonfield was able to take all 4 of those groups' activity sheets, and we came up with like a reference sheet for our leaders. So we're excited about that. They're going to be getting that to help them make sure that everybody stays on the same pace. Evaluations. So we've already started with that evaluation process, delivering and reviewing the overview of the self-reflection and the professional growth plan with our leaders. And they are going to then set up a meeting with us. We've already got that kind of on our schedule. We have to have those finished by the 30th. And it's around what kind of relationships, what is greatness going to look like in your school. So that's our big rock. And then they also are going to talk about what is happening at the school culture level, and then what are personal instructional goals that they are working on to make sure that their schools can move forward. Our ESSER plan update. Dr. Livingood had also, before I came, had already started reviewing to make sure that principals were getting ESSER plans returned to them if they were kind of loose or didn't have as much detail as we wanted to see. So that's supposed to intentionally address evidence-based tier 1, which is your main classroom instruction. And we want it to be literacy-based, content-specific in every classroom every day. So that's where the focus has to be. Our Director of Federal Programs, Ms. Bonfield, and Ms. Ellis, our CFO, and I, as I said before, we've already met. We're developing a PowerPoint so that we can have all of that outlined on how we're spending our federal dollars that we're going to share out with our stakeholders. Some of those other things that we found that we can do, which is how we estimated those funds that become available, is how we can code staff that weigh those benefits. Reimbursing general fund, because food service took a hit last year with the number of meals that went out. And so we are able to do some coding on that, which is going to help our general fund as well. We also are interested in a district leadership retreat so that we can really do some more broader planning for next year as we are really coming out of COVID. And then, like I said before, we want to look at an HR analysis. So how do our positions line up with positions that are similar in other districts? So that's work that we're doing. Staff and community stakeholder connections that I've made this over the last 2 weeks as I've met with our KEA rep. He and I've met to discuss concerns and excitement around just the start of school, the process for selecting the superintendent, my goals and the board's goals, and how we're going to be moving forward to be a better district. Clark County Ministerial Association, which is an amazing group. of Pastors. I actually got to attend that with our mayor, state representative, and our judge executive. I thought that was pretty impressive. Learned a lot of good things that are going on through strong faith-based partnerships that are kid-centered. I did a Winchester radio with Mr. Tim Smith on 8/12 from 8 to 9. I think that's a monthly commitment. I wasn't quite sure about that, but he's telling me it is, so we'll see how that goes. Mr. Greg Gates, our community ed and PI director, which I accidentally went to the wrong meeting and got to meet his board with Considine sits on that, but got to speak more at length with him about the partnerships that we have with community support. Winchester Chamber Banquet was really neat. I got to connect with a lot of folks. My most impressive meeting there, though, was with BCTC president and their chief academic officer, and how we want to increase our partnerships and dual credit opportunities so that we can graduate more kids with vocational and career industry certifications, possible associate's degrees, in addition to the AP classes, or how we're going to get kids prepared for a 4-year degree. Like, we want to really just open the doors. BCTC is going to help us do that, and then also look at broader apprenticeship programs for like welding and different things. So Mr. Keen's all excited about that. And then in communication with Senator Alvarado and Representative Dotson over the phone and text and in person, just over all of the things that people are calling them about, and then they're calling me, so we're developing some good relationships about that. I attended the webcast for both KDE Board of Education and the Governor Superintendent's webcast last week as well. And then I spent my Saturday, I thought I was going to be in the office doing those things that I've told you for 2 weeks. I'm going to come in and get my stuff really organized. Well, that didn't happen again. I started off with RDC's 2 football games, 2 soccer games that were over at Strode for soccer, and then I ended back up in a wet scrimmage for GRC, but it was a really fun night. And then the quarantine concerns that we've had, I won't rehash that, but it's very similar to what we needed to look at in labor laws, and again with the CDC and local health department guidance. We also met with Ms. Hissick. I keep on saying put a K on her, but we met with her this morning at length just to review our plans. We're very much in line with what the health department promotes, and they feel extremely confident with how we are going to be implementing that in our schools. And then upcoming, so this week, as you all can see, board meetings tonight, I want to recognize Ms. Baker. Superintendent Baker from Bourbon County is here. She's my appointed mentor through KASA. And then tomorrow is opening day for our staff, so tomorrow and Wednesday, central office will be kind of like a ghost town because we want to be out in buildings with our schools. And then Thursday, I will be out on Thursday. So I sent you that email already. My daughter goes to college, so her dad and I will be with her. And then next week, we also will possibly have a site visit with Superintendent Baker and then Dr. Fred Carter from CASA. I've got him lined up as the executive coach to come and work with me to go out and see things. But it's been a busy 2 weeks. But it's been good. Do you all have any questions?
I think you're good.
Okay. The other part that is and this was my error, Mr. Stump had sent this to me and Dr. Livingood. I thought he had also sent it to Ms. Nance, and of course Ms. Nance was on vacation. So this is a summary. Donald, if you want, you might want to come back up here just real quickly in case there's any questions. But as you can see, the status over here on the far right corner, the far right column, are the things that we have completed and the things that are still in process or are going to be completed at a later time. So we have winter break is when we're going to be painting the 400 section. And then as you can see, the next few items are completed. We have in process the field house camera system, and then you can go through the list. Are there any big ticket items, Mr. Stump, that we need to address?
Yes, I'll just bring to the board's attention the bleacher proposals for Baker and Campbell, the auditorium renovation proposals. We've kind of put those on hold until we find out more from KDE what the additional restrictions we're hearing are coming for our COVID money, because the board approved those projects in particular based on COVID funds. So as they tighten those restrictions up, we just want to make sure that we can still utilize those as we present it to the board that night in that capacity. If not, then we may need to come back and revisit that plan.
So I had asked Donald if we could table it because it was really prior to my first day. I had the privilege of attending the CASPO Finance Director training with Ms. Ellis while I was still employed with Scott County where I went to that training. They changed the language from or to and. So now you had two sets of criteria to meet in order to spend your ESSER money. So that's why he's kind of pausing that. We want to make sure that we're not going to spend money and then say no. You have to pay it back or it's going to come out of your, obviously, your general fund. Okay.
So other than that, I mean, we've completed a lot during the summer. As you can see, the things that are kind of still pending are the projects that we're having difficulty getting materials or products in, like doors and windows and things of that nature. So most of the projects this summer that you've approved have been completed, with the exception of those projects that require lead time on materials and such. We got the clock systems in for Justice and Concrete that you approved. They were the wrong systems. They were the 120 volt as opposed to the 12 volt, so they had to send them back. Now we're waiting on those to come back, and the ones for Strode as well. So we'd have already had all that stuff in had they been delivered to us appropriately. They were not. So the things that are still pending that you approved are because of delays in ordering of materials and merchandise.
Okay. Any more questions? Comments? We're good?
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
He's staying on top of things from his crew is too. Thank you,
Good
Mr.
job,
Stone.
Donald.
And then I asked Ms. Bush to run our enrollment report, so this was in your packet, so you all have this, but just to kind of let you know, we have a total in our elementary of 1651. So you can see each school breakdown there. We do have Strode with a higher amount. So Ms. Bush and I have also been talking about that, like we may need to look at next year minimizing or managing somehow in a different manner on which schools, student, or how many you can take. So it's not just like it's open for this period and whoever applies gets approved. It might be that we have a cap on how many can go, just so that we don't have one school that has more students than what they can really handle, and another school, really the other schools aren't necessarily hurting for enrollment, it's just the fact that we do have one elementary school that has higher numbers. And then our intermediate is at 746, the junior high is at 872, and then, of course, those two grades together shows you that that trend is kind of on point with GRC and Phoenix at 27. We have 1762 there with a total enrollment of 5,031. Okay, any questions? All right.
Is there a reason we got item number 30 after item 29? Did you do that?
Yeah, that, well, I don't know why it came in last, because usually it goes before.
Yeah, okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Ms. Camille was helping us.
that's fine. I
Okay.
just want to make sure you didn't have a reason for doing it.
Yeah,
So,
no.
item
The
number,
last ad is probably part of it. So
Okay.
We had it and we got it.
Okay.
So Sherry had the number.
items number 13 through 17, items 19 through 28, and item number 30. Would anybody like to make a motion to cover those?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Considine,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Richardson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 29. All right, I'll make that motion. We gotta pay people.
Yes. A second.
Second by Ms. Considine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Hendricks,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Considine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned at 8:38 p.m.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.